You've been told that being single is a problem to fix, that it's a pause before the real story begins. But what if they were wrong? What if solitude isn't an empty room, but the only place you can finally hear your own voice again? We spend half our lives chasing connection and the other half recovering from the wrong ones. You know that exhaustion, the endless trying, explaining, proving. Yet under all that noise, there's a calm waiting to be rediscovered. Stoicism teaches that freedom isn't found in control, it's found in detachment. And being single, when chosen consciously, becomes the ultimate training ground for emotional mastery, time control, and self-respect. This episode isn't about isolation, it's about power, the kind that can't be taken away when someone leaves. We'll go through 5 pillars that transform solitude into sovereignty, 5 moves that shift you from loneliness to leadership. And we start where all power begins, not with money, not with status, but with the quiet command of your own emotions. Let's begin. Emotional self-command. Stop letting feelings drive the car. How long have you lived alone? Drop it in the comments, 2, 5, 10, or 20. Let's see how many captains of quiet are here. There's a strange silence that comes with single life. It's not the kind you hear, it's the kind you feel. You close the door at night, drop your keys, and suddenly every sound in the room belongs to you. The kettle, the fridge, the ticking clock. Even your heartbeat feels louder. That's when emotions sneak in. Not the big ones, but the small, invisible waves. That quiet ache when no one texts back. That flicker of envy when friends post their dinners for 2. That low hum of self-doubt that asks, is this strength or just loneliness with better marketing? Most people think emotional mastery is about staying calm during chaos. But for the single, it's about staying calm during silence. No arguments, no drama, no validation. Just you, your thoughts, and the echo of everything unfinished inside. Here's what Stoicism really teaches. Feelings don't disappear when life goes quiet. They get louder. The question is, do you lead them or do you let them lead you? Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. But when you live alone, the outside events are fewer. So the battlefield moves inward. It's not about someone hurting you. It's about the mind replaying its own ghost. I knew a man once who had been single for 12 years. Every night he poured 2 glasses of wine, one for himself, one left untouched. Not because he missed someone, but because he didn't know what to do with the part of himself that still needed to care. One evening, he stopped pouring the second glass. That night, he said, was the first time the silence stopped feeling like punishment. It felt like peace. That's emotional self-command. When you stop fighting loneliness like an enemy and start treating it like a teacher, you don't control feelings by ignoring them. You control them by listening without surrendering. Like a captain hearing the waves, aware but not afraid. Because once you live alone long enough, you realize emotions are like the sea. They don't disappear when you ignore them. They simply gather beneath, waiting for a weaker night to rise again. You can't control the tide, but you can learn to steer through it. And steering doesn't mean becoming numb. It means knowing when to lean into the wave and when to let it pass. Some nights you'll feel a storm inside you and think you're failing. You're not. You're just learning the rhythm of your own sea. The calmest people you'll ever meet aren't those who never feel deeply. They're the ones who've stopped panicking when the waters rise. Peace isn't the absence of emotion. It's the mastery of direction. Other nights, loneliness hits like a sudden current. No warning, no logic, just pull. You start scrolling, searching, half hoping for a message that proves you still matter. But self-command means you stay at the helm. You feel the current without letting it choose the direction. That's the difference between peace and suppression. Suppression is silence by force. Peace is silence by understanding. It's the art of saying to your emotions, you may pass through, but you don't get to park here. Sometimes solitude will test you harder than heartbreak ever did, because heartbreak gives you a villain. Solitude gives you a mirror, and the mirror asks harder questions. What are you really afraid of? Do you miss love, or do you miss distraction? Whichever the answer, you're not broken. You're just honest. Those questions sting, but they purify. They burn off the illusions that once made you chase people just to avoid hearing yourself think. And when the smoke clears, what's left is a calm too deep for words, the kind that doesn't need anyone to witness it to be real. That's the quiet power of emotional self-command. You stop waiting for someone to steady you, because you've already learned to steady yourself. Here's your quiet practice for tonight. Before you go to sleep, sit in the stillness. Don't reach for music. Don't open your phone. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And what am I making it mean? You'll be surprised how many emotions shrink once they're named. Because solitude isn't empty, it's amplifying. Whatever you refuse to face, it will echo. But once you can sit with it, your calm becomes unshakable. And that's when single life stops being survival. It becomes sovereignty. The day you master your emotions in silence, no noise from the world can ever own you again. Now let's move from the heart to the clock, because emotional control means little if your time still belongs to distractions. If you felt this, leave a like. Not for me, but for the moment you realize silence can be strength. Time discipline, own the hours before they own you. Your time is your only true currency. You can lose money and earn it back, but once a day is gone, it's gone forever. Yet most people trade their hours like loose change, pouring them into arguments, distractions, and obligations that don't build them. Here's the quiet trap. People say they don't have time, but what they really mean is they've given it away to approval, to convenience, to noise. When you're single, you have a chance most people never get again. Full ownership of your schedule, your focus, your hours. That's not loneliness, that's sovereignty. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." Apply that to time. Freedom isn't about having endless hours. It's about hours untouched by the wrong demands. I once met a woman named Clara. She had been divorced for a few years, worked a regular office job, and used to spend her evenings watching shows she didn't even like, just to fill the silence. Then one day she told me something changed. She said, "I realized if I could give time to boredom, I could give it to something better." Now, twice a week, she volunteers at a small children's center nearby, helping with reading lessons, art projects, and homework. She told me those 2 evenings a week did more for her healing than years of therapy ever did. Because service has a strange magic. It pulls you out of your own head and puts you back into the human heart. When you give your time to something pure, you stop measuring life by how much you have and start measuring it by how much you contribute. Clara once said, "Those kids don't need me half as much as I need them." That's the hidden lesson of time. When you invest it in something bigger than yourself, you stop counting hours and start feeling meaning. And when I give my time to them, she said, I stop feeling like time is slipping away. It feels like it's being returned. That's the paradox. When you use your free time for something meaningful, it doesn't shrink, it multiplies. Because time spent with purpose creates energy instead of draining it. So look at your own week. How many hours are truly yours? Not rented out to anxiety, guilt, or convenience? If your calendar isn't full of what matters, it's not because you're busy, it's because you've forgotten your power to choose. If you had 2 free hours this week, where would you invest them? Write one word below. You don't have to fill every minute. You just have to make sure the minutes you spend are yours. So if you're alone tonight, don't reach for distraction, reach for ownership. Because every hour you claim back from the meaningless becomes another hour you can invest in building something that lasts. A body of work, a discipline, or maybe even the quiet joy of serving others. The truth is simple. When you stop saying, "I don't have time," and start saying, "I decide how to use my time," you don't just take back your hours, you take back your life. Long view thinking. Live like time is real. You often hear young people say, "I wish I could do what I love, but my parents want something else." Or, "I have to stay at this job. I can't disappoint my family." And later, after marriage, the same voices whisper, "I have no time for myself anymore." Do you see the pattern? We spend half our lives begging for freedom, and when life finally gives it to us, we call it loneliness. So let's be honest for a moment. If you're single right now, if your evenings are yours, if your weekends don't belong to anyone, you are holding the most expensive currency in the world, time that is entirely yours. It's ironic, isn't it? When people lose that freedom, they call it responsibility. When they get it back, they call it sadness. But freedom without direction feels empty until you give it purpose. Marcus Aurelius said, "Do every act of your life as though it were your last." He wasn't asking you to rush. He was teaching memento mori. Remember death, not to fear it, but to awaken. People misunderstand this idea. They think it's dark, a reminder that everything ends. But to a Stoic, it's light. Because once you remember that everything ends, you finally begin to live deliberately. When you understand that time is a currency you can't earn back, every quiet morning becomes sacred. Memento mori is not about dying, it's about choosing. It's about asking, if my life were a short film, what would be worth keeping in the final edit? It's not the scrolling, not the gossip, not the frenzy. It's the 1 hour of creation, the one conversation of truth, the one act of courage you actually took. Here's a truth that hits harder with age. You don't need more time to find your mission. You need urgency. Urgency isn't panic. It's simply love for the time you have left. Because urgency sharpens purpose. When you live like time is real, even your smallest decision becomes sacred. Look at Keanu Reeves, one of the most beloved actors in Canada and across the world. He lost his best friend, his partner, and his child within a few years. While most people would drown in despair, he withdrew from the spotlight. In that silence, he rebuilt. He read, he wrote, he listened. When asked years later how he survived, he said, "Solitude is my teacher." I learned that time alone is not punishment, it's preparation. That line hit deeply, because that's exactly what solitude is, preparation. Time alone is where you train your mind to hear your own calling without the interference of the crowd. The world will keep telling you to find love, find money, find status. But the truth is simpler. Find your mission, and everything else starts orbiting naturally. But don't mistake mission for status. A mission isn't a company logo or a job title. It's the direction your soul keeps whispering about when the world goes quiet. Some people live 50 years and never hear it, while others hear it once and spend the rest of their lives answering. Your mission could be writing one honest page a day, building something that outlives you, or simply living with so much integrity that people feel safer when you walk into a room. That's what Stoics meant when they spoke of living according to nature, to act in harmony with the best within you. So if you're single, stop calling it a gap in your life. Call it your season of alignment. This is the time to experiment, to learn, to fail loudly, to rebuild quietly, to become someone you'd be proud to meet 10 years from now. This is life out of the cleanest version of it. No obligations, no noise, no compromise. You finally have a clear field to plant what truly matters. And if you treat time like a sacred teacher, not a silent enemy, it will give you the one thing no relationship, no success, no applause ever can. A sense of direction that doesn't depend on anyone else. Ask yourself, if this is the only window of life where you truly belong to yourself, what are you going to build with it? Name your one-year build in 3 words. Public promise becomes real momentum. Don't waste your solitude waiting for the next chapter. Write it, because once you give your time a mission, your loneliness transforms into momentum. When you live with memento mori in your heart, you stop chasing distraction and start shaping destiny. You stop fearing endings, because you are already living with intention. And one day when someone asks how you found your mission, you'll smile and say, "It was there all along. I just needed enough silence to hear it." Share this with someone who's in their alignment season right now. Protecting your energy from toxic people. Have any of you ever felt haunted by the thought of a class reunion? The invitation arrives and suddenly you feel that old pressure to look successful, to sound happy, to prove that your life somehow worked out. You tell yourself it's just a casual get-together, but deep down you know it's an emotional minefield dressed as nostalgia. When you're single, this feeling hits harder. You walk into the room, and before you even sit down, the questions begin. Still alone? Didn't you used to have a bigger job? Man, you haven't changed much. Good or bad, I can't tell. They smile, but the air is heavy. If this stings, it's okay. Comparison only hurts where you were taught to doubt yourself. It's not evil, it's comparison. And comparison is the quietest form of violence. And sometimes it's not just comparison. You find yourself pulled into small circles of gossip, conversations you never asked for, about people you barely remember. You nod politely, but deep down you feel it. This isn't connection, it's corrosion. If that room makes you feel small, it's the room that's wrong, not you. Every year, a friend of mine named Daniel forced himself to go to those reunions. He said it was no big deal, but every time he came home, he felt smaller. Not because anyone attacked him, but because he kept measuring his worth in rooms that had already made up their minds. One year he skipped it. He stayed home, cooked himself dinner, poured a glass of wine, and sat by the window watching the city lights fade. And for the first time, he realized he didn't miss the reunion. He missed himself. That night became his quiet revolution. He started noticing how certain people left him tired even after short conversations, while solitude, one once feared, began to recharge him. He stopped apologizing for choosing peace over performance. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." Calmness isn't built by isolation, it's built by boundaries. You can't be strong if your peace depends on who's in the room. Here's the paradox. The more you protect your energy, the more people accuse you of changing. You're not colder, you're clearer, but they only notice your boundaries because they can no longer cross them. And that's fine, because peace that can be disturbed was never peace, it was dependence. Ask yourself, how many of your social obligations are truly yours, and how many are emotional debts left unpaid from your past? Not every invitation deserves a yes. Some deserve a quiet smile and the freedom of staying home. Ever skipped a reunion and felt lighter? Type lighter if that was you. Forgive people. but limit access. Wish them well, but guard your fire, because forgiveness is about healing your heart, not handing them the match again. And once you've cleared the noise, build what I call the Stoic filter, a personal wall of standards written when you are at your strongest. These are not rules for others. They are promises to yourself. Write down what you will never again tolerate: the gossip, the manipulation, the subtle disrespect you once excused. Because when you define your boundaries in strength, you won't have to rebuild them in weakness. Boundaries are like the immune system of the mind, invisible until something toxic gets in. Every time you let someone cross a line out of guilt, you teach them that your peace is negotiable. But every time you hold your line with calm certainty, you teach yourself that peace is your baseline, not a luxury. Don't be ashamed of having high standards. People who drain you will call it arrogance. People who value you will call it clarity. And clarity is the most spiritual form of protection there is. That's what protects your energy. Not isolation, but clarity. So next time your phone buzzes with an invitation that makes your stomach tighten, pause. If saying yes feels like betrayal to yourself, the answer's already no. Protect your energy as if your life depends on it, because it does. The world will call you distant, but one day you'll thank yourself for choosing calm over chaos, meaning over clatter, and strength over approval. And you know what's funny? I used to wonder why some of my old friends never showed up to class reunions. Now I get it. They didn't disappear. They just graduated from the need to prove anything. Because peace ages you well. And the older you get, the more you realize the best reunion is with the version of yourself that finally stopped pretending. Learning to love your own company. There's a quiet art to being alone, not surviving it, but truly enjoying it. Most people never learn it. They run from their own silence like it's a punishment. They fill every moment with noise, phone calls, playlists, conversations that mean nothing. Because they're afraid of what they might hear if everything stopped. But solitude isn't a void. It's a conversation, one that it's been waiting decades for you to return. Have you ever sat alone long enough to actually meet yourself again? To notice the things that make you smile when no one's watching, the way you hum absent-mindedly while cooking, the way your mind drifts towards something kind, something hopeful. That's not boredom. That's your soul saying, "I'm still here." Seneca wrote, "A man who is at peace with himself is never alone, because solitude isn't about distance from people. It's about closeness with yourself." If you've spent years giving, fixing, chasing, proving, then maybe now is the time to listen. Listen to the voice you silence to keep others comfortable. The one that used to dream, that used to feel joy just for being alive. That voice has waited patiently beneath all your noise and expectations, whispering, "When will you come back to me?" Start there. Sit quietly, no phone, no agenda. Ask yourself, what part of me have I neglected? Then when you notice something good, a kind thought, a quiet resilience, a small act of integrity, don't rush past it. Acknowledge it, praise it, smile at it. Treat your soul like the friend you have ignored for decades. Have you ever watched a child playing alone? They talk to themselves, laugh at imaginary stories, build whole worlds out of nothing but air and wonder. They aren't lonely, they're alive. Because when you're connected to your own imagination, you don't need an audience to feel complete. Somewhere along the way, adulthood taught us to be ashamed of that joy, to call it weird, childish, or sad. But that child never disappeared. It's still inside you, waiting for permission to come out and play again. Maybe the real maturity isn't about silencing that child. It's about becoming the kind of adult who can protect it. Watch any child playing alone. They aren't performing, they're present. They don't need applause to feel joy. They are joy. Somewhere along the way, we traded that wonder for the illusion of importance. But that innocence was never weakness. It was wisdom in its purest form. To laugh again, to talk to yourself kindly, to be fascinated by simple things. That's not regression, that's reunion. Because when you start treating your inner child like a friend, loneliness turns into laughter, and self-acceptance quietly walks back home. Give that permission gently. You're arriving, not arriving late. Laugh with yourself. Celebrate the moments no one else sees. The tiny victories, the quiet improvements, the days you chose peace over chaos. Because the truth is, you are your longest relationship. And like any relationship, it grows when you give it attention. This is how you begin to love your own company. Not by forcing positivity, but by becoming your own companion. The one who listens, forgives, and gently says, "I'm proud of you." When you start doing that, solitude transforms. It no longer feels like an empty room. It feels like coming home. You stop fearing silence because silence starts answering back, and you realize something extraordinary. You were never truly alone. You were just waiting to meet the part of you that never left. Tell me one small joy you reclaimed this month. A walk, a song, a habit. And if you're watching this right now, thank you for spending this time not just with me, but with the quiet part of yourself that's learning to feel alive again. Maybe solitude was never your enemy. Maybe it was your teacher, the one that stripped away every distraction until only the truth remained. Because when you stand alone long enough, you realize you are never missing half. You are always whole. Every quiet night, every moment of doubt, every silent meal, they weren't empty. They were the forge where your strength was shaped. They were the places where you learn that love doesn't only flow outward, it can flow inward too. And one day, you'll look back and smile at this season of your life. The season when you stopped chasing validation, stopped apologizing for your peace, and finally started becoming someone you actually respect. That's what solitude gives you, the clarity to see that your worth was never up for debate. It was only waiting for you to remember it, and maybe that's the real pride. To walk into love not because you need, but because you choose. To know that being single isn't a void, but the training ground for strength. Because when you enter a relationship from wholeness, not hunger, you don't cling, you connect. You don't beg, you build. And that's how love stops being escape and becomes expansion. So if tonight you sit in silence, let it be sacred. Let it remind you that everything you've been searching for, meaning peace, purpose, has been sitting patiently inside you, waiting to be noticed. And if this message found you at the right time, thank you for being part of this space, for listening, for growing, and for allowing yourself to be still long enough to hear your own heart again. If you found strength here, subscribe. Stay with us as we build this kind of calm power together. This is Move or Die Stoic, where we don't escape life, we meet it fully awake.